Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Friday afternoon industry insight. Today, we're going to be talking about the finance industry. My name is Miriam Glaze. I'm the founder of Athlete Soul. I'm here with Evan Burke, who is our program director at Athlete Soul. And our guests today, we'll come back to them in a minute because Evan will give a proper introduction for each of our panelists. Wanted to give you first a little bit of a rundown on the event for today. So first of all, this event is recorded. It will be available on our website after the event. And we will also share it with our participant. You are able to ask questions throughout the event. I encourage you to do that as much as possible. Today will be fairly interactive, so we're gonna go through questions throughout the event, but you can do that by asking a question in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And then I will be recording them and asking them to the audience. We are hosting quite a bunch of events for the month of May at Athlete Soul. Some of them are educational webinars for athletes. The others are related to our industry insights. So I really encourage you to go on our website, athletesoul.space/events. To check out what we've got going on. But for now, let's get started with this conversation. And again, please feel free to ask your question at any time during this presentation. Evan, up to you.
Thank you, Miriam.
Thanks.
Yeah, so we have an awesome panel here today to talk about the financial industry, and we're just going to get right into it with our first guest. Tamara DeClercq was a U.S. Olympian in the Athens 2004 Olympic Games, where she was a bronze medalist with the U.S. synchronized swimming team. She has worked in finance industry since 2006, mainly specializing in providing services to small businesses, and she currently serves as the Senior Vice President of Operations for Velocity SBA. Thank you for joining us, Tamara, and I think we can just start off and just kind of explain to us a little bit about what does the role of a Senior Vice President of Operations do?
Mute.
Unmute. There we go. I'm here. Hey guys.
Relaunch.
Take two. Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here. It's very exciting to share. I always love sharing my experience and hopefully help other athletes move forward. It's always a passion of mine. But VP of Operations, one of the things that I really like about operations is it's not just one tiny little specific area. You got to think about from the very front at origination to the very back at closing, whether that's a charge off and the loan goes bad or a payoff, and working with all the different teams within the loan origination and finding the best way to make it as efficient as possible. So I get to work with the team leads in each of those kind of origination to closing departments and figure out how to make it the most efficient, make sure we're compliant everywhere, and then also with the accounting group and make sure our numbers look right as well. So it's detail-oriented work, but it's also like teamwork, which is, I think, where my athlete kind of pulled into the position is as a team member.
Yeah, definitely relates to all of our athletic backgrounds, the attention to detail, and obviously having to collaborate with a bunch of different people. So sounds like you have your hands in a little bit of everything there at Velocity, which is great. And just curious, what was your first role in the finance industry?
My first role actually didn't have a title. I started, it was just the owner and the vice president and myself. So I was kind of an intern / gopher. We need somebody else to do some of this stuff. And I really just jumped in and didn't know what I was doing, didn't have any experience in the industry. I'd worked at a law firm before that and, just wanted to learn and was willing to be there to help and provide services for the team. And I just, anything that I was given, I would learn, take on, really, try and excel as best I could as I would anything else, in the sport. And that became kind of the norm, and everybody knew like they could go to Tammy because it would get done. So I quickly moved up within the organization. And when I was supposed to be working for 4 hours a week, by the end of the week, I was working full time. And by the next week, I was hired on as a full-time employee. So, and moved up fast too. So, but it was because of that, you know, dedication and drive to get things done right. So.
Yes, yes. And I mean, what you're describing is very similar to my coaching career. It sounds like you were on a little quicker path than I was in coaching. But you know, how did you get this job? Was this a job through like friends, or did you apply to this job?
It was through friends. So like a friend knew a friend who was starting the company, and I still had an interview. I went in and interviewed, and there was like, you know, 15 other people that were sort of interviewing because they did post it online as well. But I ended up getting the job. You know, I think it's always good when you know someone in the industry. But one of the things I've also done is, you know, if you don't know and you're just applying off the web and you're local, you might as well just go in and drop in and say, hey, I put my resume in. I just wanted to see the office and see what it's like. You know, I think that's always helpful too, to kind of understand what you're applying to, the environment you're going to be in. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I mean, you know, taking advantage of your network is a huge part of that transition, and really figuring out what's next, whether you're going to people for advice or like it worked out for you in terms of connecting you to a job. So I love what you said also.
Yeah.
Continuing to learn, which, you know, obviously that was a big part of our athletic careers and is always going to be a big part as we transition into the next part of our lives. So thank you so much, Tammy. And we're going to come back here in a moment and do kind of a group discussion. Right now, I'm going to introduce you guys to Sean Hindi. He is a financial advisor with Northwestern Mutual. Sean Hindi was a member of the Team USA national field hockey team for over 15 years, both on the indoor and outdoor teams. And he also spent time after his playing career serving on their board of directors. He entered the finance industry in 2018, and he now works as a financial advisor with Northwestern Mutual. Sean, welcome. And yeah, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of share with us a little bit about kind of like how you describe your role.
So thank you for that. My role is as a more personal kind of financial planner. I usually like to say that I'm a financial coach. I've been a coach in the field hockey world for about 15 years. And now as you can imagine, a lot of people that I've coached, I work with on their financial plans, maybe a little bit more important at this point in their lives as well. But in general, I mean, the business is difficult to get going, right? You have to have a clientele, similar for the other people as well. And, you know, you make connections with people that you know, and then ask to speak to friends of friends. And, you know, the more people you talk to and the more people you connect with, the more people you can help. But obviously, it's not that simple. Easier said than done. And, you know, a lot of things that I've taken away from it is, you know, that translate to athletes and being an athlete at a high level is, you know, you're competitive, right? So I always want to win no matter what it is. And, you know, even if it's the smallest little thing, it does help to have that grit and determination to do that. That's helped me be successful initially for sure. Having passion, like Tammy said, you know, I do really take pride in helping people with their overall planning and making it better for them, right? You know, the goal with Northwestern Mutual is, I'm sure with everyone on the panel here, is we want to make it the best for the client and best for those people. And it's really fun when you do get to those points where they're getting better and they're feeling more comfortable with everything that's going on, and they get excited about it. And so that excites me. That passion is certainly there. And you know, for athletes, there are a lot of things, like I said, that translate to it. You know, grit, determination, accountability, you know, being consistent in what you're doing on a daily basis, like all those things that obviously in other industries would be helpful as well, but really takes precedence with this because, you know, you're going to have up and down days like everybody does. And if you can just keep doing what you're supposed to be doing and keep on working hard, you're going to be rewarded for sure.
Yeah, that's great. And I think we're going to probably see a lot of the same traits that you all talk about, but I love what you said about, the competitive aspect and, again, kind of like Tammy was talking about, just the ability to continue to learn. So thank you so much, Sean. I'm going to introduce you guys now to Coco Archibong. Coco is a former professional basketball player. He spent time in both the NBA and overseas. He was also a member of the first ever Nigerian basketball team to make it to the Olympics in the 2012 London Games. Coco has spent the last 5 years in the finance industry working at Capital Group Private Client Services, where he currently serves as the vice president and private wealth advisor. Coco, welcome, and tell our audience just a little bit about kind of like what your role is there at Capital Group Private Client Services.
Sure. Thanks so much, Evan and Miriam, for the opportunity to even be a part of this discussion. This is awesome. And thank you all to my fellow panelists for allowing me to join you. So at Capital Group, simply as a private wealth advisor, I work similar to Sean with individuals and their families. We also work with charities, endowments, foundations to just plan for their long-term financial future. And it's holistic planning. So yes, we are primarily an investment manager, but we think about all the different parts that they need to have in place to make sure that their futures are secure. So that's helping them, working with other professionals like Sean and others that work with insurance, for instance, working with trust and estate lawyers to make sure that they have that planning in place, working with their tax preparers and the CPAs on their team to make sure that everything's working together. So similar to, Tammy's comments, the teamwork aspect definitely plays a big role in what I do on a daily basis. And it's the piece that I love probably the most, besides being able to help people directly.
Yeah, you're able to provide value through your company and your job, but you're also working with people, which obviously as athletes was a huge part of our background. And you mentioned kind of, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you were working with individual clients, and it seems like some companies and some organizations. Just kind of share with us, like, did your role progress during your time there, or do you just serve really anybody from the individual all the way to large organizations?
Yeah, so I'll start with the last question first. So my role definitely did evolve, but we work with a range of clients. On the private client side, it's basically anybody or any entity that has assets that they need managed, we can work with them up to a certain level. Once it gets too big, it kind of moves into our institutional business. But basically, we work primarily with individuals and their families, but we also work with charities, foundations, and endowments as well, because they have pools of money that they need to grow for the long term so that they can support the organizations that they are put in place for. That could be a school, could be a church, or it could be just an organization that supports name your problem in society that we're trying to take care of, right? And so that's what we do in terms of the range of clients we work with. For me personally, coming into the industry, I was transitioning directly from basketball, basically. So very non-traditional, similar to Tammy. I just got my foot in the door. I knew what I was going to bring to the table, right? I knew the hustle that I was going to bring along with me. And so it's like all I was looking for was an opportunity to learn and to show what I could do. And I was able to apply, all the stuff that we all have inside of us as athletes to the role and to the learning process. And then I was able to accelerate pretty quickly from just a relationship associate and working for somebody more senior and learning the game to now having my own book of business and, servicing clients directly.
Yeah, I love where this conversation is going, just in terms of you guys kind of talking about starting from the bottom and kind of understanding that that's part of it, right? Just like when we started our athletic careers, and it's going to be no different when you're entering into any industry. So I really appreciate you sharing, Coco, and definitely want to bring that up here in a moment when we get into the discussion. Right now, I want to introduce you guys to Scott Jaffe. Scott was a member of the 1992 U.S. Olympic swim team in Barcelona, earning a bronze medal, and he was also an All-American for Cal Berkeley, where he swam in college. Scott has spent the last 25 years in the finance industry and has worked in private client services in equity trading. He currently works as the managing director at Keefe, Brunette and Woods, where he focuses on the corporate repurchase efforts. Scott, welcome. And maybe you can just share for our audience and me too, kind of like what exactly is corporate repurchasing efforts?
So yeah, it's not something everyone would think about every day. So, and that's one of the things I do. So it's corporate repurchases, private equity exits, at the market offerings, and 144 sales. So basically, there are any type of equity trades that have special SEC rules that govern them, right? So if you're going to be a trader that just covers, a Fidelity or T. Rowe Price or the Cap Group, like he mentioned, and they might say, I need to buy 1 million shares of AT&T, right? There are no special rules for that. So you would enter the market for them and just do that. When it comes to these other things like corporate repurchases, I would be buying the stock back for, pick any bank that, of course, we specialize in financial services. So, whatever bank, let's say it's Key Bank, out of the Midwest, I have to abide by certain rules on their behalf so they don't get sued, basically, by any shareholder or by the SEC for manipulating their stock. So, and then with, the at the market offerings, you're basically selling shares. You're working with the investment banking team and the capital markets group. Again, you're abiding by the rules. You're filing the SEC documents at the end of the day. But I started as a trader, after my private client days. And so this is just, a lot of the things I learned as a trader that now I have had to learn the other rules, like 144 sales, you're only allowed to make a certain number of sales per 3-month window. You have to make certain filings. It's those kind of things. So it's any special trade for a corporation or large, high net worth individual, whether it's, our general minimum is $100 million.
Got it. Okay. So you're dealing with trading. This is a little different than dealing with a private client and their wealth management. You're actually dealing with large sums of money, being in the markets, and obviously making sure that everything's compliant.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, in a sense, they coincide. I mean, when Coco's putting together private clients and that money is pooled together, and then that firm might need to make purchases that they not able to either source themselves in one of the exchanges, they would come to an investment bank like myself and someone like myself, and we would help find them either the shares when they're buying or find them a buyer when they're selling.
Got it. Well, this is great because we have such a wide variety of experience and obviously everybody touching on different parts of the finance industry. So really excited to kind of jump into it. And just to kind of piggyback off of what Coco and Tammy started with, they talked about kind of getting their foot in the door and really having a certain mentality once they got in the door. And I just wanted to kind of throw it to you guys, and maybe if you could just share a little bit about kind of like that mentality. And this is obviously to all of you, just kind of like when you think back on your early days getting into the finance industry, what do you remember either about certain challenges or maybe certain mentality that you brought to the office every day that really you think really kind of led to your success down the road?
Well, I'm happy to start. And what I remember is just how absolutely horrible it was. Any athlete who's transitioning from being a top athlete where people care about how you perform, people want to hear your opinion, your performance is being measured and it's easy to measure, and you're quite good at it because you've probably been doing it for decades, to all of a sudden where no one cares about your opinion anymore. And you are often the grunt and you're just trying to get the time of day from anyone who will listen. There was not a lot of money in swimming when I was swimming. There is some now. So I think I had $600 to my name when I graduated from college, which is about, it went farther then, but it's still only 1 month or so of rent in the average urban area. So I had 30 days to figure it out. I had missed on-campus recruiting, of course, because I had been at the Olympics. So, living at your parents' home is not the kind of freedom you want after, 4 years away in college. In my case, my family had no business background. In the particular case, my father, he was a doctor, didn't know anything, doesn't know that, he does finally know the difference between a stock and bond, but his neighbor had worked for a company called Putnam. And I just, knocked on his door and said, would you mind if I came to work with you? So I came to work with him. You know, I introduced myself to anyone that would listen without, of course, embarrassing them. And he was on what's called the buy side, which is he buys services from the sell side of the street, and he would, be talking to them all day. And I'd say, would you mind if you ask some of them, if I can go shadow them? So I basically shadowed his relationships for 2 weeks until, and every time I would bring my resume and throw it in front of someone, and I would try to show up, presentable, prepared, ask as many questions as they, could stomach, until eventually one of them gave me a job. It was a job, in retrospect, that was horrific. I was the junior guy for 2 senior brokers, who were, big hitters. As soon as I started with them, their assistant went on maternity leave, and I was now doing her role with no training. So, and, you had gone from, Olympic medalist to, grunt, with a 5 a.m. wake up call, trying to get through the long day with no nap and no, getting fat at the same time. It's a serious adjustment. But all I can say is stick with it, and it'll have the same rewards as all the things that you did as an athlete.
Does anybody
Yeah,
else?
I second that.
Oh,
yeah, I'll jump in there. Yeah, it was horrible. I agree, totally agree. The transition it does take time, but just like Scott was saying, just take your confidence with you from the pool or the field or the court, wherever you are, and take it into the office with you, because you're going to pick things up and have the drive. And I feel like the business industry knows that now more than probably like when Scott enters. There's way more understanding of the dedication of athletes and veterans and things like that. And I feel like it's probably better today, having the OLY at the end of your name than it was before. But, taking that drive and just asking the questions and continuing to just drive forward in whatever industry, and finding that niche that you're passionate about, just like you are, in sport, I think is really important. Because I would have now, if you said, hey, you're going to be sitting at a desk 90% of your time, I'm going to be like, no, on me. But, I found a great team, and we work really well together as a team, and we're innovative, and we develop new things. And, that's something I'm very passionate about, that we did as Synchronized Swimmers. We created a routine together. So, just kind of understand what you're passionate about, and, take that with you and find things that you're passionate about, at the office as well.
Can I add to that?
Please do.
So I'm in agreement. It was tough. There's no question about it. But I think my transition was a little bit different. It sounds like, maybe because I was older. So I played 10 years of pro basketball. And so it sounds like, Scott, you might have finished like right closer to college time and then jumped into your next thing, whereas I was 32, right? And so for me, I had a young family. Like, there were other pressures that were kind of working on me, similar to yours, where it's like I had savings because I had played for a while, but like they were dwindling. So I needed to do something, right? So there's that piece of it. But I also I understood a little bit better of who I was. And so I took the time that my money would stretch to actually go and, be introspective and think about what it is at the core level that I felt like I was meant to do with my life after playing. And it really just kept on coming back to people be doing something that's impactful in people's lives. And what I saw was the finance piece was something that I was struggling with and trying to get up to speed and learn for myself. And I saw how important it was and how it was impacting my life, my family's life. And I was like, this is where I can really be helpful. So like when a mentor of mine put financial services in front of me, it clicked like, oh, I didn't even realize that was a role. I had never been exposed to that, right? So I feel like it was interesting for me from that standpoint, because I went into my role at Capitol Grove, even though I was starting as an admin essentially, I knew where I was gonna go. And I was telling people from the gate in my interview process, like, my goal is to be the advisor. So I'm working towards that. I understand that I have a lot to learn, but I'm just letting you guys know where I'm going. So that was what kind of made me, or helped me, I would say, get through the tough times that you guys are both describing. But nonetheless, it was still tough, no question. But one other thing that I was thinking while you guys were talking was, I posed it as a question, like, do you feel like it would have been any better if you would have stayed in your sport? Because one of the things that bothered me as I started to do like informationals and feel my way through what my next step was feeling like I need to be a rookie in my own game. Like I was like, what? Wait, so you're telling me, so I was looking at NBA management jobs and things like that. And I was just like, everybody I'd sit in front of, in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a no-brainer. I have a PhD in basketball. I want to learn the business side. Let's go. Everybody should get it, right? And it was like, people were looking at me like I was an alien, like, oh, you really should think about basketball operations and scouting. And I was like, no, that sounds like playing. And I can't play anymore. I want to do the business. I want to learn the business, right? And it was like, that was, disheartening to some extent, because it was like, that was my game, right? So like, I wouldn't have worked a day in my life, I feel like, if I would have got that, a start in that role like that. But it was harder for me to be a rookie in my own game, it felt like, even though that's what I am on the business side. Did you guys have similar experiences, or did you even think about staying in swimming or in synchronized?
Coco, this is a really good question. I just want to clarify real quick. You said the business of your sport. Are you meaning like team management, like on the team side, or are you meaning like the business periphery around your sport?
I was looking specifically at team management, and part of that was because I didn't know any better, right? I didn't know all the different jobs that go around our sports, right? So I had a very narrow focus coming out. I was pre-med in school, so I thought about healthcare management, and then I thought about sports management, because those are my two passions. And so as I got exposed to more, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of jobs you can do around the game, right? But like, I was very focused on becoming a GM, right? And being able to help put teams together, things of that nature. So that's just a little bit of background. I'm wondering how you guys looked at that, or if you thought about that, or if you were just like, nah, I'm done with that side of my life.
Well, swimming at the time made it easy because there was no money in it. So, my coach wanted me to train for another 4 years for another Olympics. And the thought of living on poverty level for 4 years is not enticing. As you work through your 20s and you want to start a life. So in my case, it wasn't, the thought was there, but the thought didn't last long is what I would say. So.
I was going to say, from what Scott said, I can relate to the fat part, because that's your lifestyle changes a little bit when you have a family, of course, but then when you're in this and you're grinding it out. So I'm working on my way to recover from that, but that was more funny. But I think overall, like what Coco said, I did do a lot in the business side with field hockey, and so I was played for like 20 years, and then the natural transition a lot of times was to go into coaching. To be honest, it was easier, right? And I knew the sport, right? And I knew I could be successful at coaching. Now, what kind of changed for me was that it just wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted to have anymore. It was good for the time being, and I learned a lot. And I would say that if I had gone directly into the financial industry, I might not have been as successful. But learning a lot from those experiences and being a coach definitely helped. But it's kind of what you want in your life. If you want to be a coach and you're comfortable with a certain lifestyle with your family and things like that, that's great. And I think that's a really good thing to do. And that's what I wanted and had for a while. But then my priorities changed, my goals changed, and I wanted to do something different. And it might have been the same for you guys as well. And it probably is the same for a lot of athletes as well. When they eventually stop competing, to what are they going to do 5 years from now, even 10 years from now?
Yeah, I'd say similar to that. to kind of all of you. So I was at the end of my career too. I was, my goal was the 2000 Olympics and I didn't make it. And I decided to keep swimming, and I had put off college for a long time. It took me 10 years to graduate college because I would make a national team, and with that national team, you had to train full time. So I kept putting off college. So my last semester at Cal, go Bears, was actually like my best semester. I was like, wow, I can actually learn. And like those times when you're like, why is that person doing extra reading? I can't even do the regular reading, you know, like the time that I could like really take it all in. You know, at that time I was also coaching too. So I was done swimming. I went to the Olympics. I came back. I'm like, all right, I got to finish school. Like it's taken me 10 years. I think it's time. So I did that last semester and finished. And that sort of helped me get through like, okay, well, you know, I love the sport. I definitely want to still be involved in the sport. And I still help coach today. I do clinics or, you know, take on team. You know, I have a family too, so I don't have a full team, but I help when I can because I'm still really passionate about it. But like Coco, I was really inspired to learn something new and go start from the bottom because I had spent so many years doing synchro, and it was 100% my focus. Like I didn't want to do anything else, and that's all I wanted to do. And I was ready to kind of transition into that next step where I wanted to figure out what my next, you know, my next goal was going to be, you know, and I happened to, in the finance industry. I don't think I did as much looking as Coco did, like in myself. I sort of just landed there, and then, you know, you kept growing from there. But yeah, I think, you know, having that introspection and like understanding what you're passionate about and whether or not you want to stay in the sport, or, you know, I think all of us kind of want to stay in the sport, you know, like it's such a big part of you. It's like a piece of you. So I think that's always really important and will help you get through those tough times as you transition as well. So
what I would say is, you know, if I had anything to do over again, it would be to be better prepared for a transition. And I know obviously you have to put 100% in to making an Olympic team, being the best at your sport, but you know, take that hour on the couch you might have on a Saturday afternoon and instead apply it to what am I going to do in 2 years? Because you don't get the internship between your summer, you know, in your, whether it's your MBA program or in the school, because you're training full time. So you don't have all those advantages all the other students have, that basically all the people you'll be competing with to get that first job, get your foot in the door. So it's just immerse yourself in everything you can about that business, so you know the right questions to ask. You know who, you know, that helps you find out who to ask them from. So you have a game plan. When I graduated, you know, I was still thinking about the Olympics several months away. And then after that, I had just really no idea except that I need a job. And that's not a great goal, right? You need something far more specific. So it's, you know, read as much as you can. Obviously, that's what the point of college is, to help you prepare. But stay involved with the people who graduated before you. And that's ultimately how I found out that I wanted to be a trader, is through a friend of mine who had graduated a year earlier. And when he would describe his day, I said to myself, that sounds awesome. I want to be a part of that. And then how do I get to go about do that? But if I had discovered that earlier, because I was making those plans and finding out what I need to know and who I need to talk to in advance, you know, as busy as you feel you are, you still have more time as an athlete than you often have as in real life. I mean, I normally take, when we're not working from home, a 5:30 train into New York City, and I get home anywhere from 6 to 9 at night, you know, and you know, if I've gone out with clients, it's even later. And then you have family responsibilities. So that's definitely less time than I had in college, where, you know, you have some time on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon, because you're training a lot, but, you know, there's still time here and there.
Scott, I think this is a really good comment and good segue into a question that we have. I mean, you're talking about immersing yourself in the industry and the business and in learning as much as possible before you actually get into it. And one of our athletes is asking, how do you get that foot in the door when you're a senior in college or studying for an MBA? how do you get that first step? How do you connect with that person that you can learn from? Do you guys have any advice on who
I
to
think it's
turn
easier.
to and how to do that?
Sure. I actually think it's easier than it used to be because, of course, the entire world is more connected than it used to be. But the good thing is many people in finance and Wall Street love athletes, right? They love to talk about that athletic experience. So oftentimes you can get a conversation going with someone that because of that wouldn't be able to get it. Steering the conversation in the right direction in terms of you learning something from it and also perhaps progressing your career is the goal, of course, and that's the art of and what you need to develop as a skill. So, but certainly LinkedIn, the number of LinkedIn requests I get on a daily basis, is pretty substantial. But every alumni network, whether it's the Golden Bears, of course, having swum there, or once you get that first job, any company that you work with, the association factor is substantial, and you should work that network as hard as humanly possible.
Yeah, I just think about even what Miriam is doing with Athlete Soul of like, I wish we would have had anything like this back in the day, because then I could have probably thought and planned ahead, like you were saying, Scott, like, thinking about these things of like, oh yeah, what am I going to do in 3 or 4 years when I can't play anymore? And so, having this platform is really good, and obviously encouraging athletes to just think about it, even, doing these things, sending out the emails, it'll make them think about it. I mean, I'm still the athlete rep for USA Field Hockey, so I talk to the athletes there, and I do mention, just, hey, like, if you guys ever want to chat or you need any connections, let me know and we can help you out. And I'm sure you guys would all do the same, but it's really nice that there are these platforms like Miriam's, like Athlete Soul, but also, social media is really, really helping. I don't remember dialing up on my home phone anybody to ask for an internship or something. It's just something that I didn't do, of course.
Yeah, I agree. I think this platform is incredibly powerful, and I'm grateful that you guys are doing what you're doing because it's necessary. To Scott's point, we all could have done better with a little bit of dose of reality of what's coming on the other side of this for all of us, right? But it's hard. It's hard to do on your own. Like as you were saying that, Scott, I'm like, do you really think you would have been able to do that? Do you really think you would have been able to get that bronze? You know what I'm saying? That medal, if you were thinking about anything else, right? So it's like, but like, I think if someone could have given you just, tugged on your shirt tail a little bit, like, hey, you're doing awesome. Here's some things, just check this out when you get some time. Maybe it might have, started to work on you. So I agree with that for sure. And I guess the only thing that I wanted to add to that question was just be curious, right? Like, I think too often we as athletes put too much pressure on ourselves to know all the answers. And I don't think you're supposed to know all the answers. I think you should just be curious about the things that really pique your interest. Like, I don't know, you're sitting around, you're watching Shark Tank, you're like, this is interesting. Like, who are these people? What's a venture capitalist? Then you start to do the work that Sean and Scott are talking about, where you start reaching out to people that and then you can ask really targeted questions like, I'm interested in learning a little bit more about X. Do you know anybody in that field? And then the natural curiosity maybe can bring you into places that you might not have known. But I feel like I know from my side, I was, analysis paralysis. I was stuck in place for a long time until I finally had, built up the courage to just reach out. And actually, because I didn't want to mess up someone's contact. Someone's like, you should call these people at Wells Fargo. They'll get, just have a conversation with them. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say to them. I don't know myself if that's what I want to do. So I don't want to, jeopardize your relationship until I really understood that. Like, if I'm just being honest and transparent about where I'm at, that's all I can do. And then it flowed from there. And one thing led to another.
So great. You guys are all hitting on so many great points right now. I could literally go off in like a dozen different directions, but I just want to, as we're on this topic of like reaching out to people and connecting, Scott, you mentioned it a moment ago, and I just want to clarify for our audience, like you said, you get a substantial amount of people reaching out on LinkedIn. Like, just give us an idea of like what that looks like so that the athletes out there understand that it is going to take a lot of persistence to get in touch with some of these people.
Yeah, I mean, if you accepted every single one of them, you'd have in the thousands of connections, and that, of course, then is certainly not the intent. And I've gotten LinkedIn requests from the guy who sold me my last car, and I'm like, well, he's just looking for other people he can sell a car to, right? So it's always have a good reason to be contacting that person, right? What is it you're interested in? So that there is clearly a good tie to that person, right? In general, like when I take on a new client and I get some sort of request from someone I've never talked to there that just wants to add to his network, I'm like, well, that seems a little silly. I don't know them. I couldn't vouch for them. That's not the right approach. But if you're someone that says, I'm a senior, graduating this year, I swam the same event as you. I'm also interested in finance. Do you have 10 minutes to speak with me about X, Y, Z? Of course, absolutely. So that is, an entirely different approach than just someone who's looking to expand their network of people that they've never met, may never contact. I'm not sure what they do with them. But so, and in general, that is a good lesson to apply to any business career. Have a goal for talking to that person and make it concise as to why you want to, so that they understand, the commitment coming in.
And I also just want to point out, notice how Scott said 10 minutes. Everybody on this panel is extremely busy, and time is money in their business. And so if you're just reaching out for an undisclosed amount of time, you're probably not likely to get that meeting. 10 minutes. I love that you said that, Scott, because I think that's perfect for the athletes out there to understand that you want to get in there, you want to ask your concise question and kind of, maybe build that relationship down the road.
And you can accomplish a lot in a 10-minute conversation. So, sometimes when I'm pitching even a multi-$100 million transaction, I know I'm not going to get a full 10 minutes, right? And so, but you can still win it with far less than a 10-minute conversation if you, have done a little bit of homework going in, know what that person's trigger points might be in. And there's just an enormous amount of information online now about everything. So, do your homework going in.
Yeah, and I really like what Coco said about just being curious, just be curious about what the other person is, and, your experience, they want to learn about your experience too, but, be curious and ask questions about what they do and how they do it, and, just continue to build that knowledge, but be curious about the other person too. I know it's always fun for us to talk about our stuff, and like, you want to take that passion and excitement from what you do and get that same thing back from them, and be really curious about what they do and how they do it, and continue to ask those questions, I think is really important too.
And I would just add, even Scott said it, of connections, right? Like, I mean, I would definitely drop 10 minutes for any field hockey person or any Team USA person, or honestly any athlete, right? Which is, it's a common bond that a lot of us have, of like, we kind of know the struggles that happened before. Oh, hey, you want to learn a little about that, or talk about whatever? Cool. But 5-10 minutes is probably a good amount of time, right? And then be done. But have a little connection with that person. I'm not just some random person that's going to try and help myself. I want to learn. I want to learn from you, whatever it may be.
And do you guys have any specific recommendation that relate to the state of the market right now? It's going to be even harder to find an internship or a job, or to put that foot in the door to get started in the industry. So any specific ideas or anything you learned from 2008 that we can replicate today? Just some ideas here.
Well, sorry if I'll talk first, but with Northwestern Mutual, we're actually even busier than before and kind of growing even more. And so and I don't know, I mean, all of us, I feel like, have been working in the last 2 months, where some people haven't. I don't know if it's a recession-proof or pandemic-proof business, but certainly I've been busy, and a lot of people are worried about their overall financial plan and what's happening. So you're always, it's a good person to connect with, and just in general, I think the industry is pretty strong, and there's always opportunities to get your foot in the door and see. The reason probably is because it's not for everybody, and it's hard to make it, but there's definitely big opportunities within Northwestern Mutual for sure, but I'm sure all your guys' companies as well.
Well, what I would say is first you have to go with what you love because you're going to be more successful at that. But two, my general advice, COVID or no COVID, is try to find something that cannot be automated, right? That artificial intelligence isn't going to replace. When I first started trading, it was an open outcry. There were thousands of people on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. It was spectacular. It was so much fun, right? Now there are a couple hundred at best, and it's not the living it used to be. So find, that would be another thing to do and that's always hard to do, right? And thirdly, I had a CEO say this to me today is, if an industry is not attracting capital, either financial capital or human capital, it probably is not a growth industry, right? So you think about that, but there's nothing you can do to insulate yourself from any one situation. You could be the best person at your company, but if that company goes out of business because of COVID, there's nothing you can do about it. So my view of the way you protect yourself is be prepared, not only financially to have a little bit set aside, but the skill set. If you have the best skills, even if you have to wait a while, someone's going to come along and notice that and pick you up. So it's constantly learning as much as possible, right? And adding to your career set, your resume.
Yeah, I definitely second that. Like, I feel like as everyone is talking, I think it kind of comes down to trying to match your passion with the need that you see out there in the world around you. And things are changing quickly, but you kind of can see some big themes that are starting to pop up with kind of the acceleration from, physical to digital. So getting yourself in those growth areas, like Scott was saying, and hopefully you're passionate about it. But if you're not, you might have to find creative ways to find roles within industries that are, that are thriving even in this time frame that we're in, because they're definitely out there. The other piece is, I know, so I was still playing in OA, so it's a little different for me, but I watched a lot of my friends basically transition, like shift themselves into the MBA route, right? And like more school, more education, more skill building, to Scott's point, right? But I think, I'm not one for just doing stuff to do it. I say it should have some kind of purpose and intentionality to it. So like, to the extent that you can build skills in an area that you want to hopefully long-term be successful in, then I feel like you're winning, right? So then you're using the time wisely, and progressing in some positive way.
Great, super great advice, and I like that you guys are touching on many different aspects of what's going on right now. And on the question of education, Coco, I think that's really interesting, because I was going to ask you guys if you think that it's necessary to have studied finance or have an MBA or any kind of a specific education to get into this industry, or as an athlete, if you have the grit and you're curious and you really want it and want to shadow someone, is that also a good way to go about it?
Well, when I started, all people wanted were, and one of the reasons I got interviews is because they said you were successful at something, you're reasonably intelligent, or you must be because you went to decent schools. You're not a horrible looking guy, so I can put you in front of clients. Very basic things. That, I think, a lot has changed. Now I look at what companies are looking for even my role, and it says must be able to program Python. Okay, well, that's not me, right? So it's having the skill set is more important than it ever was. That doesn't mean you can't get into it in some way without those skills, but having those skills is becoming just more and more critical.
Yeah, I would say I think that you want to be able to have that education. You don't necessarily need to have that MBA in finance to get in the door. You know, that's where I think the athlete part of it comes in. Like Scott was just saying, you know, they see you've been successful other places. More than likely, you're going to be successful here too. You know, and are you going to, after you're done with your sport, go get an MBA for 4 years, or try and get started at a company? I would say, I mean, probably this is because of why this is what I did, is go get yourself some experience. Go in there. You can also do school at night. You can learn lots of stuff. There's lots of free resources, especially now with COVID, that you can learn things that you wouldn't have been able to learn without that experience or that MBA, that you can now learn just by Googling something, you know, and going to Khan Academy or the millions of other places you can get resources. And I think, you know, if it were me today, walking out of the college door and stopping my sport and going, do I go to get my MBA, or do I go get in the door at a company? I would say I'd rather go get that experience, you know, and start building those connections, start building that experience, and then also continue, you know, just keep continuing to learn. You don't necessarily have to get an MBA to learn all the things you would, you know, get in an MBA. You know, it's good to have, it's great. Like, you would probably start higher than the gopher, you know, like I did. But, you know, I think that there's many different routes you can do. And just because Susie over there is doing one way doesn't mean you have to do it like that. You can certainly find your own way. You know, I think that's important, to not project yourself like everybody else in my school is doing it like X, Y, and Z. It doesn't matter. You can still be successful and find your own way, even if it's completely different.
Yeah, Tam, it's such a great message. There's many different ways to get to one point, and usually it's not very linear. So I think, you know, obviously there's value in education, but you can also get there without it. And we actually got a question for Coco that I think he's going to take offline with one of the athletes, but it relates to doing all the things while you're still competing. And in essence, it wraps up to all the points that you guys have made of being more prepared, being curious, looking outside the box. You can do all of this when you're still competing. You can build those relationships in certain industries, and we're definitely, this has been our message from the beginning of, like, there's multiple ways to do things. You need to reach out, you need to build your network, you need to be curious, and this is how you're gonna be more prepared for the transition. So I'm gonna let Coco answer that question offline, if that's okay.
I can actually speak to it quickly now.
Great, go for it, thanks.
So a mentor of mine, while I was still playing, suggested that I use the time in the way that Albert was suggesting, right? And go see if I can mentor, like, interns.
And just so we clear, Albert is suggesting, or is asking, if at all possible, to be able to work in the business world while you're pursuing a professional career in your sport.
Yeah, the only opportunity that I got to actually take him up on that advice was one of the years when I got hurt, and so my workload went down dramatically, and I had even more free time than Scott was describing. So I always have enough time, I think, to do that type of stuff. But I was just I had all the free time, so I kind of had a thought in my mind that I wanted to go into healthcare management. And so through the team connection, I was able to start shadowing the general manager of a hospital in the town that I played. And so it wasn't specifically what I'm doing now, but it played a big part in the master's degree that I got in public health, and it played a big part in just my thinking around wanting to be more on the business side than necessarily a highly paid employee within a structure, if that makes sense. So, I just would encourage you, Albert, to, as you start your career, you find those opportunities, and you might be able to develop them through whatever team you're playing for. That's just something, a quick word of advice. But I guess the other thing I would say is you got to be careful about how they view it. You just kind of float it easily, because I think I was in the right situation where the team was open to me doing things outside of basketball. Some of the teams I played on, they didn't want to hear anything about me reading a book or thinking about anything except dunking a basketball, and it's like, that's ridiculous, but that's just the way it is too. They're paying me to do a job.
Wish I could have ever dunked a basketball, by the way. That would have been cool.
You could take some of this height now. I don't need it anymore. So.
Well, you guys are in the same city. At some point, you should be able to do that together.
I did see that. I'll bring the field hockey sticks. That's a little bit easier. You'd be good at that too, I'm sure.
My back hurts. My back hurts just thinking about that, man. Like, you gotta get low to the ground.
That's true.
There's a lot of me.
So guys, we actually getting to the end of our webinar here, but I wanted to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to do this and share some word of advice with the athletes. I hope that was enjoyable. We probably will have some follow-up questions for you guys from some of our audience, so just be prepared. But that's the whole purpose of those discussions, is to make sure that anybody that wants to get that foot in the door is able to pick up the phone or send you an email and get that conversation started. Evan, did you have any additional question you wanted to ask our guest or anything else?
No, I mean, so much good stuff today, talking about always being open to learning, the persistence it takes to start in this business. And then also everybody was kind of talking about the mindset, right? Like that mindset of learning, but then also at the same time, like something that stood out, Coco was saying, like, I walked into that room and I was like, I'm going to be the advisor, and just carrying that confidence with you. You guys had such great messages for the athletes out there, and just thank you guys again for taking the time to join us.
No problem.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. It's much appreciated. I hope you all guys have a great weekend. Thanks again for all the knowledge. I know we started on a little bit of a negative note where you guys were all like, oh man, the transition getting into finance was hard. But I hope that we finish on a more positive note where the athletes basically have all it takes to get into that industry. You just got to be persistent. So I wanted to make sure that we had that before the weekend, and I wish you all the best, and stay safe out there. Thank you, guys.
Stay safe, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah. Bye.